Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Tow Club Industry Podcast. Today's guest, I'm super excited about, and he's certainly one of the contributing reasons for the creation of this podcast because of my relationship online. I have Phil Wilkes of Wilkes Towing in Riverhead, New York. Phil, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. So, for a lot of listeners and watchers, most people that are listening and watching to this have encountered Phil and or me at one point in time on social media. Phil is one of the founders, if you'll permit me to say, Phil, of Tow Truck Mafia, which is a very popular social media group centered around lighthearted, let's say, discussions. I'm being politically correct here, surrounding towing. And I'm really happy to have Phil on. And Phil, first thing, man, I wanted to start by asking you, obviously I know you and a lot of people know you, but if you could just kind of give us a brief kind of like a little bit about yourself, how many years you've been in towing, sort of the region that you service. I know it's Riverhead, but you've got a service area beyond that, obviously, and like what type of towing you do.
Okay. Well, I've been towing for approximately 18 years. Pretty much, I shouldn't admit this, but as long as I could legally allowed to tow, I've been towing. We'll leave it at that. I mean, there was maybe a year before I had my full towing endorsement and I was in a tow truck. Um, I've had the business for about 15 years. Actually, this October it's going to be 15 years. Um, Riverhead is eastern Long Island. About 60 miles east of New York City,
Okay.
out that way. Like I was telling you before we started, where there's two forks on Long Island. It splits. There's the North Fork and South Fork. I'm located right in between the forks. The South Fork is the Hamptons that everyone knows, and the
Okay.
North Fork is honestly on its way to becoming the Hamptons because the original Hamptons people are sick of the new Hamptons people, so they're coming over. They're discovering the North Fork, and there's less traffic and less. There's nothing around, so they like it. So we're definitely seeing like an increase. It used to be like you know, grandma's 98 Ford Taurus. Now it's, some lady's 2020 Range Rover that needs, we're seeing a difference in the cars that need to be serviced and everything.
Right.
Um, I primarily tow for police departments. We tow for a couple police departments out here. I do some private property impounds here and there at my leisure. Where I am, like, it's not a huge concern parking, but it's starting to become a problem. So the signs are up, and every now and then we get the guy selling the odd car here and there, and we got to impound it. But it's not like I almost want to say it's not like anywhere else. We don't, swoop in when they're there for 5 minutes and grab it. I don't particularly like that towing. I know there's a need for it, absolutely, especially with apartments and stuff like that, but that's just not for me.
Yeah, and that may not necessarily be kind of what your area needs, right? Like
Needs,
it's not
exactly, yeah.
congested to the
Yeah.
extent where it's like they're clamoring to tow cars right away
Yeah.
and whatnot. Yeah, that's
We go,
interesting, man.
the car that's been sitting there with no plates for a week will get called and tow that.
Right. Right. So it's more of a nuisance at that point, and they're like, get it out of
Yeah.
here. Yeah, no, that's interesting, man. So like obviously you're like sort of a suburb of NYC and you're near the Hamptons in some respects, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
how you brought that up. So it sounds like the demographics where you're at are changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's cool, man. So, like I said, I was telling the audience, you and I, like social media all these years, I want to say like what, 15 years, man? Like you and I have like interacted roughly,
Gotta be, yeah.
on social media and or the various like towing websites. And I being that we've been on social so long, you and I obviously we've had laughs and there's been like towing content within the groups and like arguments and just all different kinds of discussions and banter back and forth. I mean, I think the thing like I want to know, I mean, like I have my own opinion, but I'd like to hear from you is like, do you think that's like hurt or help towing? And like, how do you think? Like,
It's like for me, it's one of those things where you see like the one guy, and I'm not knocking this at all. I'm not putting it down. Sharing like the slow down, move over thing over and over in a towing group. It's like it's contained. We all know you have to slow down, move over. It's not helping you to share that with us. Like we
right,
get it. Like we get what you're trying to do, but like it doesn't seem like any of that expands beyond the industry. It doesn't reach. So I don't think it's necessarily helping, but I also don't think it's hurting. I don't think,
Right. Do you think that it's kind of like, hey man, like venture outside of our audience and maybe do it publicly, maybe dedicate some resources to doing it, maybe run this stuff on your trucks, maybe run it like on your company social media page and share it
yeah,
publicly.
yeah,
Certainly
exactly.
those avenues would be more effective, right? Than just
Yeah, then sharing
sharing
it
it
in
within
like
a
a
towing
towing
group.
exclusive group. Yeah,
Yeah. It's a like virtue signaling, right? Like, look at me, I'm a good guy kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Like
no,
we all know, slow down, move over. Like you don't need to tell us. Like,
right. Yeah, no, that's interesting, man. The other thing, I mean, you and I, man, we've been entertained, I would say, like on social media throughout the years so much. And like, I don't know, my observation, and I think probably your observation too, but I wanted to kind of check in with you on this is like, I think like initially I've probably been using social platforms like we spoke of, 12 years or so, maybe 12, 15 years. And like initially, I think you and I probably would agree it was like more the younger crowd that was kind of doing it.
mhm.
Especially the drivers, and that's always frustrating to like towing owners because it's like, hey, drivers, like, you're posting stuff maybe you shouldn't be and whatnot. But like
Yeah,
I feel like younger owners are have adopted it as well. And
mhm.
you and I have probably noticed the same sort of sources of humor. It's like the I don't want to be like an ageist, but like the older gentleman who's like clearly demonstrating that he doesn't know how to use social media, you know, uh,
Boomers.
and like we laugh and there's like they gaff, they post something
Yeah,
on their company page that's like intended for their brother or something,
yeah.
or whatever. And it's like
Alexa, give me Google chili recipes right now.
right. But like,
Oh my god, I
yeah,
did that. And my Alexa's going off.
yeah, no, no, that's okay. That's actually kind of funny, man. It's like
That was a boomer
proof,
moment.
proof in the pudding there, yeah. But like, it's pretty evident to me just by observation. But do you think it's like more widely adopted now, like from a generational perspective? I mean, I see guys. I mean, of course, I'm not as young as I was 12 or 15 years ago, but I feel like I'm seeing more like another generation of not just towers, but I'd say just people in general, but especially towers, like using the platform. Have you observed the same thing I have?
Yeah, I've noticed like the towing pages on Facebook, the towing groups are like the membership is crazy. 17,000, 20,000, and they're
Yeah,
active. There's like
yeah,
I mean, we had TTM back in the day up there, but it was a wide array of people too. It wasn't just towers. It was, a
right.
mix of everybody. These towing groups, I've noticed it's just like towers, old, young owners, potential towers, people that got out of the towing business. Like more and more are using it. Yeah.
Yeah, some random overseas guy trying to sell flashlights to a towing group or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever.
literally.
Or tow trucks for that matter even, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting, and sometimes, like, I got posed this question by another tower the other day, and it kinda leads me to wanting to ask you about this, but the question that I got from another tower was they sent me, like, a message on social media, like, "I see, like, you talk about your business, et cetera, like, I think he was essentially like almost like critiquing me, like, "Oh, it's a waste of time. You don't get any business from it." My question to you really is like, do you think there are benefit for towers? I mean, I certainly feel like I'm doing something positive by publishing content, but like, I feel like, do you think towers would benefit from like managing their social media company pages and kind of like staying active for their audience? I mean, I've noticed that you and I do. Like, how has it helped you? I mean, I can speak for myself afterwards, but how do you think it's helped?
It just like it gives you a strong presence where people know who the go-to people are. Like, I'm sure you have it by you, but we have tons of these like, Riverhead Ask Questions group or Riverhead for Sale group, this and that. Someone will say, hey, I need a tow. And 8 people will comment and tag Wilkes Towing because they all follow the page and everything. You don't, it's not like an immediate, like you don't post something and all of a sudden your phone rings for a tow, but
Right.
it gives you a stronger, solid, like I'm an owner operator. I'm a small company, 2 trucks, and I have stronger social media presence than the companies local to me that have 20, 25 trucks. And people go, I'm not knocking them, they're great companies, but
Sure.
people go to me because they know of me and they know, they can go to my Facebook page and they can, this one
Right.
recommended because it's just like a snowball effect.
Yeah, no, it's I feel the same way. And I've, just what you told me, I sort of was asking that really for the benefit of my audience. I've noticed the same thing about you in particular. And if you didn't tell me, for example, and I want the audience to really like tune into this. If you didn't tell me that, hey, I'm a small outfit and I'm very locally based, I'm part of the community, I've got, some help and I'm a smaller outfit, but people know who I am. If you didn't tell me that, I would have assumed, hey man, this guy's like a 12, 15 truck outfit. He's all over social media. And I mean, I hope people that are like listening to this are like starting to think about like the impact of social media. I
Yeah,
oftentimes, even myself, I'll just say 10 years ago, I thought the whole thing was a game. 10 years
yeah,
ago, to me, social media
yeah,
was just a place where you could share memes and like,
yeah,
make fun of some celebrity or some athlete
yeah,
or banter with one another about who's a better
yeah,
president or
yeah,
whatever. And so it's interesting that you point that out because if if I was to look, kind of like at the amount of people that you're connected with. If I was to look at the amount of people that I'm connected with, if I was to look at, oh, these groups that Phil and Art and others that we know, let's say friends or acquaintances of ours, if I was to look at that, I'm certain that there are other people, much like you, that are smaller operators, or much like me, that are smaller operators that have a decent, presence online.
yeah,
And certainly with respects to like how they certainly look like they got their stuff together. And they certainly
yeah,
look like somebody that somebody should be contacting if they need towing. And in my case, my towing is very specific, but you do general towing. So your
yes,
audience is wider and
yeah,
you have more opportunities to help somebody as a result of them finding
yeah.
you on social or knowing sort of who you are. um I kind of I did want to bring this up too, is like, it's we touched on this a little bit, but you and I both see and we get a laugh out of this. There are towers out there, and this could be generational, it could be because they're like newer to social media, but there are towers out there that like struggle with like understanding what appropriate content is or should be, or like
Mhm.
moderating posts. And you and I will get a
Yeah,
chuckle out of it. We'll be like, hey, rookie, like you probably
yeah,
shouldn't say or do that. But like, a lot of times, man, these guys really make our industry look bad. And
yeah.
I know that you and I probably feel a particular way about it, but I'm wondering like if you had to advise a tower like in another market, like what do you think they need to learn to hey man, like get it together, dude. Like why are you sharing these like ridiculous,
Not everything needs to be posted like that. That's like the one, like, keep it light, keep it something that, a 65-year-old man's gonna laugh or a 12-year-old girl's gonna laugh at. Like something, like the frog sitting on the bench that says he's waiting there because his car got towed. Like,
right,
we've all seen
right,
that meme. Now, I post it like once a month when I have nothing else to post, and it gets last. Like, you don't
right,
need to post about, how this other company couldn't tow this car, so they called you and you came in and I will never publicly talk bad about a company that did bad. That's not, because it hurts all of us.
it's divisive too. Like
Yeah,
that was one of the things. And I'll tell the audience and those of us, I mean, look, Phil, I think you and I both know that there are going to be people, like either with us on something that's affecting
oh
the
yeah,
tourism industry or against us. And certainly not
yeah,
everybody on social likes me. And I could probably safely say not everybody on social likes you.
oh yeah,
But collectively speaking, right, in the
yeah,
aggregate, I think I've learned a lot about like staying away from like really like provocative things,
hmm,
like me personally. And you'll
yeah,
probably get a chuckle inside because I mean I used to post things that it's
oh yeah,
like dude, like half the country either likes or hates this. And
yeah,
I've learned like, hey man, like that's probably not the best thing to discuss,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah,
I hope the audience understands like this stuff does matter, and
yeah,
people share things, and before you know it, you and I both have seen posts from towing companies. It's like, dude, these guys are done. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
like what an idiot. Like, let's just say internally, we're talking to ourselves like, whoa, you should
Yeah.
never post that. And by the time they realize it or understand that it's like a negative impact, what, a million people have seen it, let's say, or
Yeah.
500,000, like a lot of people have seen some of this content. So yeah, I hope
It can either
towers,
help you,
you know,
and like I said, it's not immediate help. Like you're not gonna wake up tomorrow and be like, "Oh, I made a post on social media. Now my business is booming." Or it can literally kill you and sink you.
right, where people will start commenting. And again, I want to remind towers, like, all it takes is like the one person with a huge following, and let's just assume that this person's in your local market. And I'm going to just use you as an example, right? You're in Riverhead. It's not a huge community, am I right? Like, it's not like a
No,
huge population. It's not
yeah,
NYC.
no,
So if you were to discover that like the local plumber was like a really bad guy, let's say, right? And let's say you shared an experience or shared somebody else's experience, like, hey, this guy did this. It seems to me that like pretty quickly in your market, people would be like, well, that's the guy I'm not calling,
yeah,
whether it's a plumber, electrician,
yeah.
tower, like anything. So I hope like towers can like heed that and just kind of, understand to be kind of cautious, man, like with their content. But
You even got to be careful. I'm guilty of this sometimes, and it came back to bite me a few times. Even personally, what you post, I think you've had to deal with it a couple times. Personally, what you post, if someone doesn't like it, they will track you down, track your business down, track everything down,
yes,
and they will come after you. I've watched at least one I can think of that was making political comments on a police department's page or something, and he just made the wrong comments at the wrong time, and it sunk his business. The wrong people or the right people saw the comments and started just, oh, he's so and so. Well, this is what he owns. This is what that, and just, oh, he tows for this police department, but he's saying it, and it's destroyed his business. He's out of business now.
right. Yeah, I've seen those as well. In fact, you've highlighted a few in the past, internally in our group where we talk about,
Mhm.
in Tow Truck Mafia, at the very least, we're obviously fooling around a lot, joking around a lot, but at the very least, sometimes the right things get circulated where we all just kind of look at it and say, ah, that's a valuable lesson right there, like of what not to do. How
Yeah,
do you, obviously, you haven't been shy about sharing your opinion. I haven't been shy about sharing mine. And I've certainly had, people like you just said, I'll post something personally, share an opinion, and people will track down my company social media page and make comments. And it has been a bit of a responsibility, and I have had to dedicate a certain amount of time to moderating the posts. And if somebody goes on there and just curses up a storm, I certainly don't want, that on my company page. But how do you typically how do you typically respond to that? Are you just removing comments? Are you like messaging people like, hey man, what's the deal?
it depends who it is. If it's someone I actually know personally, I'll delete the comment and say, hey, just for future reference, chill out with that. I've had issues on my personal page too, where I'm like, hey, like I have customers that are friends of mine on here. You gotta like chill out with that. But if it's someone I don't know, I don't, have no intentions of ever knowing, I just delete the comment and I ban them from the page. They can still see it, but
Right.
they just can't like, comment, or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. And I hope towers are heeding that, because it's like, man, just block them or, ban them or whatever, particularly towers that are concerned, about how they look. They're part of a
Yeah.
community like you are. You don't want some off the cuff, some racial, let's say, comment or some cursing or something that, potentially makes you look bad. Um, I did want to ask too, just a follow up on that is like, what led you to kind of get Tow Truck Mafia off the ground? Like what, like how did that start?
Technically, if we're being technical, I didn't found it. I stole it. Sort of. I was just getting into towing, and I wasn't really paying much attention to social media because it was basically non-existent then.
That's right.
And I started like few friends carried over from MySpace. Believe it or not, Fred, Fred was
Yeah.
one of the first companies. He used to have a company MySpace page for Fred's Towing.
Wow. Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah,
Pretty
it was
advanced.
before. Yeah, for him even.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I never had one, and well, of course, I
This
never
was
really thought
before
that.
you even had like businesses. Like I had a Wilkes Towing one, and it would ask you your name, and I put the first name Wilkes and the last name Towing, and that's what it would come up as. And Fred did the same thing. But anyways, so I stumbled upon this page group, Tow Truck Mafia. I think it was on like Tow 411 or one of them. It was even before Facebook. So I started paying attention. It was a group of guys from Michigan, and they were funny, made me laugh. Then they made the Facebook group. So I joined that. And then I was in a car accident in 2012 where I was stuck, not so much in bed, just stuck. I had a fractured hip, a shattered ankle. So one of the guys said, "Hey, do you want to help moderate it?" So I did. I invited some more towing people. I invited some other towing people. And this was when I had my one international. I don't know if you've ever seen it, with like the drop bumper, the
I
visor,
do
and everything.
remember that was a cool looking truck, man.
And it had the TTM stickers all over it. So me joining it and becoming an admin on there brought, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people to TTM, and it just started to get out of control. And I was still like stuck, not doing anything. I was barely working, so I was like staying on top of it. I was on the iPad, on this, on that, always staying on top of it. And the guy got to a point where the old admins were like, "Well, it's not about Michigan anymore. We started this for Michigan. We're out." So the other guy that founded it stuck around for a little while, and then he just couldn't keep up with the drama, couldn't keep up with everything. He said, "You want it? Take it. I'm out." So I was like, "All right, no problem."
Sure. And then the rest is history.
Yeah.
No, that was those were the good old days, and it's very interesting for those listening. I just want to kind of like remind the listeners, like we're talking like 2012, 2013,
Yeah.
14. This is prior to, and I'm just going to use Facebook as an example, but this is pretty much prior to any social media platform sort of attempting to moderate their content. So
Oh, yeah.
if
It was
if
the
anyone
Wild
who's
West back then.
yeah, yeah. If anyone who is listening was part of that group, they are laughing right now because it's
Yeah.
there was like things discussed in there. I'm like, how is this even like okay? Like, just
Mm.
wild, I mean, just the content, man. Like nowadays, if that group would have been shut down in probably a day, and that group carried on for years, like, you know,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
then we
interesting.
build up a membership of 7,000 thousand members, and I would go to bed and I'd wake up and it would be gone. Facebook was just like, "Oh yeah, we got too many complaints. Goodbye." And I'd be like, "Well, I guess we're starting over." And we did that 3 or 4 times at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think the current iteration of the group is what, like around 1,000 members, something like that.
Yeah. We're only like 987, somewhere around there. I was looking early,
Oh,
but we've been getting steadily people requesting every day, and I don't know where it's coming from. Usually, when that would happen, it would mean someone was complaining about us somewhere.
possibly,
But
right, and
I could
someone
always
wants to
tell
get
when
in
someone
there,
made a post somewhere else complaining about us because we
right, and
get
someone wants to
alerts.
get in there and see what all the fuss is about,
Yep.
like, what makes this group so controversial or whatever.
We
So
would see the troublemakers coming a mile away. We could tell right away, like where they were coming from with it, and we would just add them and let them join just to have fun with them.
and then their first post would be, "You guys are heathens," or whatever, like,
Yeah.
"You guys should be ashamed of yourself. You're
Yeah.
poking fun at the industry." It's like, dude, we're having a good time. Like, take it
In a
easy.
private group.
Right, in a private group, we're not, and nobody in the group was necessarily calling each other out. From my recollection, it's like, look, if someone had an argument with one another, we kept it in the group, and I mean, at the end of the day, and I know it's probably gonna make you laugh, but towing is a bit of a brotherhood, right? Like we all kind of understand,
Yeah.
like we
No,
all
it
have
is.
our problems. It's a 24-hour industry. Guys are gonna be overworked. They're gonna lose their sense of humor on occasion.
Yeah.
They're gonna snap at one another, and you know, it kind of it's like it brings me. I've touched on this in the last few episodes, and like a lot of my past like complaints. You know this because you've seen the stuff I post, but like a lot of my past complaints or like gripes about the towing industry really has been like, I get angry at our own industry because I say, why does towing have to be the last industry to like adopt new things, like
Yeah.
new technologies or adopt change? Like right now in towing, and I'll just kind of preface this a little bit by saying like the big changes right now in towing are like this like crazy factor of increase of our expenses, right? Whether it's insurance or what
Equipment.
trucks, the last 2 years, trucks, is it safe to say 30-40% in two
Yeah.
years?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 30-40%, if people from outside of our industry were listening to that, they'd be like, what the hell is that? 30 or
Yeah.
40% 2 years. How do you recoup that? How do you and I don't know about you, but I think my rates have gone up 10% like in the last 2 or 3 years. Like they haven't gone up commensurate with the increases like in fuel and all
Yeah.
that. So but like we're not adopting change at a pace that I think is necessary for the industry like right now. And I know this is a lot of listeners are going to chuckle, but like and it's because like I'm like an advocate for electric vehicles, but like right now like that is like a that is something that's proliferating and like we're going to just have these things and we're all trying to deal with them. We're all trying to learn like how to deal with them and some guys you probably noticed this. It's a lot of it is like the drivers, but even some owners, like these things suck and they're not masculine or like
Yeah.
they everything catches fire and like so they're I would say like taking their eye off the ball by having like an emotional response to something that's going to happen whether you and I like it or not.
Yeah.
Like so like I wonder
And
like
to be honest, Teslas are not hard to tow. They almost doesn't get any easier to tow a normal Tesla. Like
they really are. Yeah, they're really not. I mean,
the
there's nothing.
control arms have the cutouts and like
There are
it's
no special effects. They're
yeah.
pretty standard, right? And so it's like I hope like people that are listening to this, you and I will poke fun at it and we'll have conversations, but like, what do you think needs to change for towers to like be able to look around corners and like, oh, hey, this is coming. I'm gonna get ready for it because you and I see it, we discuss it, and obviously some towers are gonna be better equipped to like do the change, and some aren't. And I'm sitting here wondering, I'm like, because Phil, in my local market, and I imagine this is the case in your market, I see like the old guard of tower go away. They're like, you know what? I'm out. I did this for 30 years. I have like one local guy. He's like, I can't stand this electric nonsense and blah, blah, blah. And he's using all these. It's like, dude, you just want to retire. It's okay to say
Yeah.
that. But like he's
You'll need to train
using,
something.
yeah, he's using the changes as like a reason why he's angry because like something changed. And my thing is like what do you think needs to change for like us to start like and you and I can't solve it ourselves, but like, what do you think? Do you think the younger towers need to kind of be more active, or
Yeah, and I also think, and I'm probably this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I think there needs to be it needs to be a stricter industry to get into. Like I'm living proof that there's a low threshold to get into towing. Like anyone can just go buy an old truck and start making millions,
right?
as everyone thinks.
Yeah, that's their idea. Like, yeah, I'm gonna get rich. I'm gonna buy a tow truck and get
They're
wealthy.
on the right track with classifying tow trucks as emergency vehicles, so maybe they should be held to emergency vehicle standards. They have to have the proper lighting. You have to have six ratchets. Four that you use, two extra. You have to have this amount of chain. Yeah, and the
Right.
trucks have to be. It's like that for you, isn't it, to do
I
rotation?
mean, for the most part, like there's the federal stuff, which doesn't really is more of like for an overall in the aggregate, like commercial vehicle, and then like the state and local stuff that's like more specific, like you got to have this if you want to tow for the police, you got to have that. But I agree with you. I think like the word that I'm thinking of is like more barriers to entry, like a little bit of a
Yeah,
higher kind of threshold,
yeah,
like you got to kind of know what you're doing. We've all seen and laughed at the newbie tower who like bought a tow truck and like bit off more than he can chew and does some like really dangerous or like crazy thing and ends up
yeah.
killing somebody or hurting somebody, because they didn't have enough training. And yeah, no, I'm in agreement on that. I think like the barriers of entry need to be a little bit more robust because for the industry to be able to move forward, the people that are doing the work, it seems, um, need to be able to have basically the acumen to be able to see around the corner. I mean, in order for you to see around the corner, you got to be able to know your trade, but you also have to be able to be aware of what your surroundings are. Like, I mean, just I know you know this, but I'll tell the audience like my towing company, we just do private property towing for the property management industry. And so because that's my specific area of service, I'm looking at, hey, what issues are my customers facing? I'm looking at that. And if I was working for the police department, I might be more interested in like, hey, what kind of issues are the cops having? Like, why are they complaining about towing? Like, what are they running into? Maybe I should clean that up so that I could be more attractive, or I could perhaps
Yeah.
pursue a police contract. I know that you mentioned you serve law enforcement. If you don't mind telling me, like, how are they to deal with in general, not any specific department, but like, has that been a good transition for you, or?
Yeah, I had my issues. I don't know if you remember a few years back with one,
Yeah,
and I more or less kind of had to spank them and tell them behave, and
challenge
they
them a
learned.
little. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, yeah, it's good to work for them. It's a lot of it's communication. Like it's they're dealing with so much. They call for a fire truck, it's a radio away, and the fire truck is there. They call for EMS, it's a radio away, and they need something more from the fire truck, like from the fire department, like hey, another truck for a landing zone for a helicopter or something. It's there. Then the tower they call, and it's like they're calling me on my cell phone, who's laying in bed half asleep at 2 in the morning. Like it just like I wish there was a way to make it more like I would love to one day see towing companies where it's like you have living quarters and you get called, you slide down the fire pole, hop in your tow truck, and go like,
Well, I've always thought I agree with you, first of all, because the type of response that's required, they want you. I used to years ago tow for various police agencies, and the response requirements are pretty strict. I mean, they want you
yeah,
there when they need you there. And let's face it, right? Like, if you're a police department, the last place you want to waste resources on is like your officer out on the side of the road, like waiting on a tow truck, right? Like, if
yeah,
I'm the
standing
police
in the
chief, I'm
dark.
like, yeah, I'm like, can you just hurry up? Like,
Yeah,
what have you. So, yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think a lot of towers that I talk to say, you mentioned the emergency sort of the emergency services kind of designation for towing. In California, it's not currently like that. And a lot of people, and I'm in California, of course, but a lot of people that are in the industry in California, obviously they wish that wasn't so. They want that designation because it probably helps towers be a little safer. It makes the motoring public aware a little bit better. It classifies tow trucks as first responders in some respects, even though
right?
maybe like they're technically not, but it kind of
But
groups them,
yeah,
as in that traffic awareness sense. So I hope that we can do a little bit better job in the industry of protecting towers, man. Like we just had one in our local market killed, and poor guy, he's just out there doing his job, man. He gets
trying
hit
to
in.
make a living.
Yeah, he's just trying to, he's trying to feed his family. He had a family, and so perhaps perhaps tow truck mafia can continue, I should say, because we are, but continue to raise awareness on that. I think
And
that
we try with other towers, like we don't mean to put people down, but if you come and you post pictures of your truck and you got a light bar that's older than me, like you know, I'm big on, as you know, lights,
yeah,
and I've got away from like look at me lights to more so emergency lights. That's your only line of defense when you're on the side of the road, and I towers don't help themselves when it comes to that stuff. Like that's I see guys posting, oh, I got this light bar from Amazon, this and that. Like you got to go with name brand. Everything has to work. Everything has to be functional. Like that's your safety right there.
a supportable product that is going to be reliable for you. I mean, no, I don't disagree, and I think that that's another thing that we could probably talk about forever. It's like the towers that cut corners for the sake of making something look good, as
Yeah,
opposed to spending more resources on things that are actually functional and
yeah,
that you improve your odds of being seen. I noticed you post pictures of your equipment frequently, and I always look at it and I say, hey man, if I'm working on the side of the road, that's what I want. I want those
Yeah.
lights. I want those lights. I want them to be functional. I want them to work. I want as much visibility as I could possibly get. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, man. Hey man,
And
this has been a really good discussion, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really do appreciate you coming on, man. Like
I,
it means certainly a lot to me, and I'm hoping that by virtue of you coming on, the towers that sort of know both of us, they know that our comments on social media or our posts, at the end of the day, we are in this industry together, and like, sure, we might tease you, and
yeah,
we're gonna share a meme maybe that that challenges you a little bit, but at the end of the day, ultimately, we are really truly trying to kind of get along with one another, particularly those towers. I just want to add, like, if you're not in one another's market, you should be sharing information. I mean,
absolutely.
like Phil, you're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. If I ever needed to know something about law enforcement towing and wanted help, I would want to be able to call you. And
Yeah,
conversely, if you were saying, hey, I need to, my area is growing, as you mentioned, I want to do more service work for the property management industry and tow vehicles, in that fashion, I should be, I will be, of course, but I should be, somebody like me should be willing and able to give you advice. So I hope the towers that are listening, like, just take something from that. It's like if somebody's not in your market, you should be transparent with them. You
yeah.
should try to
I
help
mean,
them
that,
as opposed to tear them down and whatnot.
yeah,
So thanks again, man. Of course, again,
yeah,
Phil Wilkes from Wilkes Towing. I appreciate you coming on, man. And I do
no
want to let
problem.
the listeners know one more thing before I leave. If you aren't willing to know, don't tow. It's real simple.
Right.
So thanks again, Phil. I appreciate it, man.
Yep, no problem.
Take care, man. Talk
Yeah.
soon. All right.